Hello there gorgeous gamers and welcome back to Pure Play TV, and we've got a real treat for you on this one. We've got a review for Frostpunk 2, the depressing city builder sequel. Yes, it's miserable, it's supposed to be, but it's still great fun in its own depressive way. Find out why Frostpunk 2 is a must-play game and one of my own Game of the Year contenders. Forget what you already know about Frostpunk, because Frostpunk 2 is a completely different game, and if I'm being totally honest, I wasn't all that pleased when I first got into it. Hold your horses though people, don't go down to the comments to attack me just yet. I did right by the game and I put the hours in, and now with a week of sleep deprivation behind me and a newfound appreciation for the changes that have come with the sequel, I'm well and truly hooked on 11-Bit Studios' latest depression simulator. It's the only kind of game they make, and I'm all for it. Frostpunk 2 follows on from the first game, though it's still very much a standalone story. Knowledge of the previous game is not required, and even if you have played the first game, you will need to get familiar with the systems in place here, because this isn't just a simple sequel, and you will not be strolling into Endless Mode, or Utopia as it's called here, expecting to just start building a grand city. I know, I tried to do that, and then I realised, wow, this is not the same as the original, I definitely need to do some learning. 11-Bit could have just rehashed the first game, made things a bit bigger, a bit more complex, thrown a few more maps together, a few gameplay features, and called it a day. And you know what, most of us would have been okay with that. More of the same is never bad, right? Well, these days we call that an expansion, and only the worst of publishers dare to sell such things as full price releases. 11-Bit doesn't roll like that. We've got a completely different game on our hands here, and even if you survived the Frostlands before, you've got a lot to learn. Rather than just building a city around a generator and piling your resources high, this time around you're managing more than just a city. The idea is to build your main city up and then send out teams to scout the surrounding frozen wastelands for places to colonize. The main city only has a limited amount of resources, so exploration is vital in feeding resources back to your home city via a network of outposts, all of which are mini-cities in their own right and need to be managed much like the main city, so housing, heat, food, goods, welfare and so on. Rather than managing on a micro level as with the first game, you're now doing it on a much larger scale. You don't have to pay attention to the minute details. Cold coming in? No problem, just make sure you've got enough fuel stockpiled and enough workers feeding those piles. The generator will take what it needs to meet demand. The fact that the cold indicator is no longer central to the player's view kind of tells you the shift in focus in the sequel. You will manage the cold as long as you manage your resources and your people, who are also resources and need to be used wisely. We're not dealing with tens of workers at a time here, we're dealing with hundreds and thousands, and if you can keep your city running well, you'll grow that population out and have more human resources at your disposal, and you can move them around to suit your needs. So if your main city has excess workers but one of your outposts needs some hands to work on the local food supply, you can move them between places, as with other resources. The circular grid structure of the original is now replaced with a hexagonal play grid. To begin with, you only have a small area of the map unlocked, and you need to unlock extra tiles on the map and the resources they hold by bursting through the frost, which costs human resources. Once you've explored an area, you can set up a relevant district, so food, extraction for fuel and resources, industry, and so on. Initially, I was not too keen on this and I wanted my old circular city streets back, but I got used to it, and once you let the game play out a little and you let it teach you its new systems, the new way of fighting to survive, you start to appreciate the game a lot more, and the decisions the developers made in going for a bold, big new game that throws out the old and replaces it with the new, but in a familiar fashion. It still feels like Frostpunk, but on a grander scale. You're not managing a struggling community, you're managing a thriving city. You're not venturing out to the Frostlands hoping to find survivors. You're going out with the intent of finding what you need, setting up a colony, and conquering that bit of the frozen world. The first game was very much played with the player on the back foot. This time around, it feels like we're being invited, encouraged even, to go on the offensive. To be bold with our decisions, to use the thousands of people under our rule, and I found it really did push me to be a bit more ruthless than I was in the first game. See, you're not dealing with individuals as much here. You'll still get the occasional note from the public, and they will chime in as a way to tell you which way the public is thinking, but there's greater disconnect between you as the leader and the peasants you've ordered to eat half rations. They're more disposable. 107 dead due to cold? Well, shame, but we've still got 10,000 other workers. I guess maybe we could research some warmer housing? And that's the kind of politician thinking that creeps its way into the game, because you're not just fighting the elements, you're managing the expectations of the public. But the public is not just a group of desperate survivors looking to somebody, anybody to lead them. No, this is a massive public that has split itself into political factions. And while they're happy for you to sit in the driving seat, each political faction has their own map to salvation. And obviously, they're all wanting to take a different route to get there. Much like the real world of politics, Frostpunk 2's political landscape needs to be carefully navigated, because a law that sends one faction into rapturous applause, leading to positive rallies in the streets with people chanting your name, can also lead to another faction taking to the streets, but in anger instead of jubilation. I really enjoyed this aspect of the game, and it adds so many layers, giving you much more to think about when you're passing laws, spending on research, or expanding your city and its offshoots. There's also the fact that the game holds up a mirror to real life. Okay, we're not freezing our bollocks off just yet, in fact it's quite the opposite. But the themes found within, immigration, welfare, disease, hunger, political corruption, they're all present here and now, and Frostpunk 2 cleverly incorporates these themes, though never in an on-the-nose manner, and in a completely apolitical way. It just gives you the choice, and it's up to you how to navigate the world, and to deal with the consequences of your choices. There's a lot to learn in Frostpunk 2, and if you put in the hours, you will be rewarded. It helps that the campaign serves as a playthrough tutorial, with each chapter presenting new challenges, pushing you to explore other ways to play, to use the full scope of your resources to survive. And once you finish the campaign, there's Utopia, which is endless mode, where you can put your skills to the test. Before we end, I'll just give a quick note for those wondering if you're able to take this one on the go using the Steam Deck, ROG Ally or other handheld PCs. The short answer is no, but the long answer is no. But if you really want to play it and don't mind a bit of compromise, then yes. The game relies heavily on hotkeys, though it is possible to play entirely with just a mouse. However, tapping your screen is not the way you want to play here, so at the very least, attach a Bluetooth mouse, at least until some geek puts some controller bindings together. The original game had great controls on console, so I'm hoping we'll get something similar in the future for handheld players. While Frostpunk 2 is a little slow to get into, it opens up into a huge game that dwarfs the original in scope and ambition. Managing the political climate as well as the frozen one is great fun, and always had me thinking about my next steps, who I'd have to butter up and who I could afford to disappoint for a little while. Managing the city and its offshoots is challenging and will test your patience and planning skills, because poorly allocated resources, namely human workers, could be the difference between surviving the whiteout or being consumed by it. And that is the end of this review. Thank you for watching, it's always appreciated. And if you enjoyed this video and want more, go on down below, hit the like and subscribe buttons, and give the bell icon a ding so you're notified whenever we've got new stuff for you to watch. I've been Chris, you've been gorgeous, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, cheers my dears.